Scheduling this. Oh, there we go.
And we're live.
Hello, everyone.
Hey, everybody. So you'll notice that's not Brandon Tessers. That is Sarah Guys. And I'm still Mike Wang here. And you'll notice the title for today is that we're throwing together a special edition of This Is Not Therapy Hour because we have very special news for the Effective Artistry family. Sarah, do the honors.
Yeah. So Brandon and his wife have had their baby. It's a beautiful, healthy baby boy. And so they're out this week, obviously. And we are here to take over and do our best and muscle through it. And oh, good. Yay. Yeah, we've got some Brandon fans here that are very excited. I've been hearing a lot about this. Yeah. So basically, we don't really know what we're here to do today. We're just gonna talk, and so this is the This Is Not Therapy hour, and this is not therapy. I am Sarah Guys. I'm an executive functioning coach with Effective Artistry. And this is Mike Wang, who works with Fusion Academy. You've probably seen both of us, but just to do a little formal introduction before we just start talking about whatever we feel like talking about. So great.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those like crossover episodes of like Marvel versus DC or something like that. Maybe not quite as epic. And I'm sorry to everybody in advance that you have to listen to my voice today. It's not as calming and bold and deep and rich like a fine espresso, a cup of espresso like Brandon Tesser's. But you get Sarah, so I'm really happy to be here.
I'm sure that Brandon is going to love that description of his voice from you. Well, cool. So before we hopped on, Mike and I were just catching up, and we decided that instead of me just asking questions like offline or off the stream, we would just do it on the stream. So my question for Mike was just, so I know that you had some interest in kind of what I do and my work as an executive functioning coach and my podcast, the ADHD Artist podcast. But I definitely want to get into some of the stuff that you do as well. So I feel like this will be just like us interviewing each other back and forth, unless people have questions, and hopefully they will. How does that sound, Mike?
Yeah, I would love to use this hour as my personal not therapy hour, but I would love to open up to anybody that has comments in the chat boxes, and we can pivot as fast as we need to. Yeah, so I mean, I work with kids that are in grades 6 through 12 here at the school, and we have the most diverse school population. Not necessarily by skin color, race, creed, but I think in terms of neurodiversity, it's really pretty diverse. And we work with the most common thing that I see, and it's funny, it's in different seasons that I see this. One of the most common cases that I see is kids that there's never a question about horsepower of their engine, like they're processing machines when it comes to their brain, but they can't like turn something in on time. Like they can't find a paper. They can't, if there's a long project, they'll wait till the last second and then they'll just throw something out. And so I know that in the past we've sort of talked about this as resource allocation, or like sort of being able to govern that. But like, how do you approach it with your work with these kids, where it's never a question about ability, but it's just being able to like cross that finish line when they're supposed to cross that finish line?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many like so many different ways I could go with that. I have my own like personal struggle with that, which is lots of procrastination, and being, having this mind that's going at a million miles a minute, but then like once it gets down to things, I can't focus. So I can talk about it from my experience, and I can also talk about kind of some of the work that I do with my clients who are older. I think I don't work with anyone under the age of 16. So it's a little different, but not really. Because there's a lot of, I'm guessing there's a lot of the same struggles of like, I want to do this thing, I care about this thing. Why can't I do this thing? Why can't I wake up in the morning, say I want to do something, and then do it? And it's frustrating. So yeah, so anyways, there's a lot of different ways I could go with that. Do you want to talk about procrastination specifically? Um,
I don't know. Like I'm trying to like stay away from specific kids just because I'm thinking about like how deep into the telling their story without their permission I want to get into. But if procrastination is something that sort of resounded with you or resonated with you, what's something that you sort of
yeah,
experience?
so some of it is going to be more, I say, in like the time management category, right? So it's like, okay, I know I have this homework that's due, let's say 2 weeks from now. And I see it and I say like, cool, I can probably do that. You know, whatever. I got 2 weeks. I'll chill out and I don't really need to worry about it now. Um, which is fine until you know, check it out 2 days before it's due and realize that it's going to take 8 hours to finish this thing. So some of that is planning. Some of it is just reading through, you know, what the prompt is. And I'm using like a paper as an example. I don't know if you want a different example, but that's kind of just where my brain went. So what I always say is just read the prompt, put it away. Like read the prompt and walk away for 5 minutes, or just like take a lap around the room, just so that you can kind of process what is being asked.
Hmm.
Then that next step is going to be, okay, how long do I think this will take? And write that down. It's one of those things where, so write down how long you think it'll take. And then as you're going, make sure to write down how long it actually takes, because you're doing a few things here. You're using a strategy of planning, but you're also building the skill of time management and planning. So Brandon says this all the time. It's like, try to decide, or try to see how long you think something will take, and then write down how long it actually takes. So all of these are kind of generic because we're just kind of talking in a generic fashion. But yeah, so read the prompt, take a walk, come back, and break it into smaller steps, right? So, okay, before I do anything else, I have to decide what I'm going to write about, right? So, like, okay, so here's the prompt. I want to write about this thing. So, or maybe you don't know what you want to write about. And so you go through the process of, you go, okay, what is my process for figuring out what I want to write about that? And maybe it's brainstorming, maybe it's talking with a friend, maybe it's just like writing a bunch of bad ideas on paper and seeing what you come to. And I mean, I feel like everyone talks so generally about like breaking things down, and then it's just so much more complicated.
Hmm.
And it's so individualized, and so I don't want to go on a tangent of like, if you just break things into smaller steps, everything will be fine. But we've got different ways of doing that. So um I'm trying to think, am I kind of staying on track with your question?
Yeah, I think so. And while you were talking, it sort of reminded me of like how I run my day. Like I live off of an Outlook calendar, or like some of you guys that don't use Outlook, you're probably using like Google Cal. And like there's things that my boss asks me to do, and I hope maybe she's not listening. There's projects that she asked me that to do that I just simply don't want to do. So my first step is just, okay, fine. I'm just gonna rip off that band-aid. I'm gonna
Mm.
throw that event on my calendar, and then I'm gonna figure out, okay, walking it back like 2 weeks, what are the steps I need to take? Okay, so who do I need to bring into that conversation? All right, how long is that? Oh, it's a 30-minute meeting. Let's plan it over lunch so that we can at least eat something while we're doing something displeasurable, right? And then like, okay, so then we have to have a follow-up meeting that, a week after that, and then we finally do the thing. And I just think about like, I only have 8 hours here at work. How do I actually chunk that time off into
Yeah.
half an hour chunks, 10-minute chunks, or hour chunks to accomplish something? If it's really important, it's probably going to take an hour and a half chunk of time. And I try to avoid those as much as possible unless I have to do it.
Yeah. I love what you're talking about with the chunks of time, because it's something that comes up a lot with my clients, but also like with those of us with ADHD specifically, is this whole idea of like time blindness, and it just being like it's just a wash of 8 hours or a cloud of 8 hours, and something will happen, but I don't know what it's going to be. And so sometimes I actually use that term of like chunking out time. And I think that some of where I'm coming from came from the Pomodoro technique.
Tell me about Mr. Pomodoro.
The Pomodoro technique is it's this whole idea where you work for 25 minutes and then you take a 5-minute break. Then you
Mhm.
work for 25 minutes and take a 5-minute break. And so it works differently for different people. There's lots of ADHD videos out there on this, by the way. I'm guessing that probably some people watching have heard of it. I think the name comes from like, is it those like Apple timers or
Oh, the looks like it's a tomato.
tomato timer? Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so Pomodoro, and so the kitchen timers, right? So you set that for 25 minutes. Um, the key to this is that you have to take the break. So it's helpful in getting started. So you say like, oh, that's only 25 minutes of my life. Or you could start smaller, like, oh, that's only 5 minutes of my life. And then I take a 1-minute break. Um, which sometimes part of the reason we don't start something is because we're like, that's too overwhelming. I know that's going to take me 3 whole hours, and I can't even begin to imagine. So I'm just going to play video games, or I'm just going to like play games on my phone and ignore it. Right. So Pomodoro technique is just a nice way of getting started.
Yeah.
The other thing I like about Pomodoros, in talking about chunking out time, is that you can kind of use them as like, okay, how many Pomodoros would I need to get this thing done? Right. So if you take the 25-minute chunk, so you said like an hour and a half is kind of if something is really important. So you could say like, okay, like, so that'll take 3 Pomodoros. And then if it takes 2 Pomodoros, then you can, remember that for next time. But it's just for I'm sure that Brandon could go into all the specifics and details about like why that happens. But for me, it just helps me see time a little more clearly.
Mhm.
And timers are my friend. Timers are your friend. Timers are wonderful because they tell you exactly how much time has passed, so you don't have to pay attention.
Yeah. I love that idea. But now I'm reflecting on my calendar, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
looking at my Outlook right now, and all the activities that I have on here, I'm confident that I know how to do. Maybe by the afternoon, I've run out of juice, and I'm like, okay, there's not enough caffeine in the world for me to actually start this. And so I'll sort of assess and say, okay, this can wait till tomorrow. But if I put it off till tomorrow, I can look ahead and say how painful of a day that's going to be. But what about for folks that like are looking at their list? They've mastered the Pomodoro technique. They've calendared out their day, but they just like they know that they can't necessarily might not have the skills to do it. Might not
Mm.
they might just sit there 25 minutes frustrated. Like I'm thinking about my like 8-year-old daughter who was helping with math last night. It's like it says just do 20 minutes of math, but she's like, no, I have to finish this. Like it's so important and I can't do it. I'm like, okay, what would my
Mm.
inner Brandon do? Now I'm asking, what would my inner Sarah say to that?
So just to clarify, so when you're talking about like your daughter specifically and this 20 minutes of math, is that partly she doesn't want to get started on it, or she doesn't want to stop after 20 minutes?
She doesn't. Well, It's both things. So sometimes she just doesn't want to get started, and so like her natural escape is screen time.
Mhm.
It's something that's nice and calming after a whole day. Or she'll just like, I need to finish this, or else like it's just going to be hanging in the air, right? It's like, but then she'll just sit there, and it's if we chunk out 20 minutes, there's no way she's going to finish it in 20 minutes. And I
Mhm.
think that genuinely the teacher that assigned it didn't mean for it to take more than 20 minutes. But
Yeah.
for her, it obviously does because she doesn't necessarily know her math facts very well. She's still counting on her fingers to sort of figure out things. And so it takes her a longer processing time.
Yeah. And right. So that's going to be more daunting than if you knew like, oh, sure, it'll just take 20 minutes. It's pretty easy. I just have to kind of like do the thing. So my question is how does she get started? Like or like what so when she does sit down to do it, what's the first thing that she does?
Yeah. Well, she depends on whether or not she knows how to do, like, let's say it's math. It depends on whether or not she understands the directions, right? And then she'll just wait to be prompted by either me or my wife Kelly, and then she'll need our full attention for that 20 minutes to be able to sit there and be able to be focused for that 20 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, so it's the first thing, this is the key, right? Is like how to get started. And instead of it being like a cloud of math homework of like, okay, I have to do this thing. I'm wondering like if you start with just, okay, I need to do one problem. I just
Mm,
need to do one problem, and then I always say take a walk because I do that because it gets your body involved too. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do one problem, then I'm going to walk to the bathroom and I'm going to walk back, or I'm going to walk to the kitchen, get a piece of candy because I deserve it, and then walk back. Um, because sometimes it's like when we think I have to do my math homework, that's a lot more to process than just I have to do this one math problem.
mhm.
Then you can start with, oh, okay, I don't know how to do this problem. What do I need to do to understand this problem? Or to figure out how is there like something I can read? And obviously I don't work as much with kids anymore, but it is kind of the same thing of like what's the first thing? What's the
Yeah.
first thing you actually have to do? Um,
I think that makes sense, right? Like, I think that the teacher prescribed this sort of generic one size fits all block of time for kids. And really, for her, we need to like examine what is the amount of time that it's actually going to take her to accomplish this one task, right? And that's in the reflection piece. And then we can just appropriately carve out that amount of time in our evenings to be able to dedicate to that task, which is really tough as parents, right? Like you're exhausted by the time you get home, and you're like, oh, now I got to
right.
do math that I don't so
Right. Yeah. We're exhausted. Right? Are you talking about you as the parent there being like, I have to do math or
yeah, yeah, basically.
yeah, if I
Um,
have kids, which I probably will a little later, I'm just gonna be like, I don't know any of this. Like Google it or let me phone a friend or yeah, your auntie is gonna come over and teach you because I was terrible at math.
yeah. Well, thanks, Sarah. That's really helpful. I feel like just being able to talk that out of like how I'm going to budget out time with daughters from that, it's going to work out for even this evening.
Yeah, well, and Brandon talks a lot about cost and value. That's kind of central to our work is like clarifying the value. Like, sorry, the screens on StreamYard are really weird. So I'm like, can you see my hand? Like clarifying the value and then knowing the cost and weighing them out because the whole accomplishment equation is the cost has to be equal to or less than the value in order for you to do a thing. So just to use like some other examples, it's like, okay, I've lowered the cost. Like here's this is hilarious. Like trying to get my hands in the ring.
I guess we could do this. There we go.
No, don't leave me. Um, but yeah, so okay, I've lowered the cost. I've focused on that. Now it's like, but like I just still can't get myself to do it. And then it's like, okay, well, what is the value? Like, why do you want to do it? Why do you want to do your homework? And it could be, like, well, I don't want my teacher to be mad. Great. Okay. You don't want your teacher to be mad. So that's like part of the value. You know, trying to clarify what that is, which I'm guessing is probably not like the the best thing to move forward with doing homework. Like, oh, I just don't want my teacher to be mad at me. But those things matter. Okay, maybe I want to learn math so that I can, pass the test. Maybe I want to learn math because I want to, get better at counting. And clarifying that can sometimes help us get started rather than being like, I don't know why I'm doing this.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like I was just talking.
Well, when I talk to teachers and I talk to parents, that value piece is always there, where it's one of the worst responses I feel like I could, and I hate to be so dramatic, but it's like, I don't think a good answer to why is this important to learn in a class the answer I feel should never be because it's going to be on the test. It's like, who cares? Like, what's the actual application of it? Like, it actually doesn't matter. I think we lost Sarah for a second. But I will just keep sitting here and wait for comments to come in. Oh, wait, no, she's back. There she is.
I got kicked out.
Mm-hmm.
This was like, you're not doing well, Sarah. Get out of here.
No, what I was saying was just like, that relevancy piece has to be there. And I guess in relevancy, it's more about, you guys referred to it as value. We've referred to it as what is authentic learning. Oh. We got a commenter in the stream. Cost and value when I want to be on time. For my yoga class. I'm late every time.
Procrastinate to take a shower and get dressed. Yeah. I mean, some of that is the time it takes, right? So that adds to the cost. If there's things like, okay, I have to take a shower, I have to get dressed. Those are added costs to getting to this yoga class. Clarifying the value can sometimes be, and I'll just ask Kitch Squatch, because I know that you interact with us a lot. Like, what do you want to feel like? What are you gaining by going to this yoga class? And I'll say, like, some people would say, this would be my answer is, while we wait, is like, I want to feel at peace, or I want to like have exercised for the day. I want to see my friend who's in the yoga class. And so clarifying that before you start trying to lower the cost can be helpful. Then when you look at all of these, great. So then taking a shower, getting dressed, picking up the mat. Yeah, that's a lot of things. That's a lot of things that you have to do. Part of it is like, do I have enough time to do that? Part of it is just having that routine and saying, like, okay, I'm going to lower the cost by, this is one of my tricks, putting my yoga mat like in front of the front door so that I will trip on it if I'm going to go out the door. So I'm like forcing myself to notice it, like, oh, okay. Oh yeah, the yoga mat I'm supposed to bring. So then once you've kind of set up like that, like, okay, I'm going to set myself up later for success by putting this yoga mat where I cannot forget it. Good. You already trip on it. Okay. That it's an excellent strategy. I've been using it for years. It helps me so much. So then in terms of like taking a shower, like getting dressed for that. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of ways we could talk about lowering some of those costs. One of them could be, the night before, laying out your yoga clothes, right? That's something that I do where I'm like, because I love working out. I hate going to work out. So the night before, I will set out exactly what I'm going to wear, like detailed, like it'll be on the dresser, which my fiance is not thrilled about me just like leaving clothes all around, but it helps my brain. So I'll leave out, socks, shorts, like, the top, like even if I'm going to have like a headband or something, all of that's there. So all I have to do is walk over to the dresser where I've got it set up, put it on. Takes so much less time than having to decide, like, maybe I'll wear this shirt today. Maybe I'll, do I need to wear these shoes? So that's one thing that can lower the cost.
You're removing barriers is what it sounds like, right? Like you're also simplifying decisions that you have to make before you go exercise.
Yes, everything is ready to go, but I just check Twitter for a sec.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah. So, and I don't know, like, oops, is a shower for class necessary? We need one after. Yeah, and everyone has their different like routines. And that is a question, I guess, is like, what is absolutely essential? But let's talk about the Twitter thing. Because mine is not Twitter, mine is like Instagram. And several other things. Like I know people that do Reddit and something that will suck you in, even a Google search, like, oh, I'm now going to look at all these things. So part of it, like one strategy could be, hide your phone, or, hide your phone, or like turn it on do not disturb for the half hour before you go to class. You could do something that I will sometimes do where I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to look at my phone and like specifically Instagram or Twitter for 20 minutes. But once I get to the car, I'm going to let myself like go through and see a bunch. Like I'm only going to give myself 2 minutes, but I'm going to get that. But I have to get ready first. I have to get to the car first. So I'll kind of like incentivize myself. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. It is like quicksand.
Yeah, I wonder if do you guys ever use the strategy at your practice of like increasing the cost to doing things that you want to avoid, like signing out of signing out of social media, and then having to like manually enter passwords in every single time?
Yeah, I mean that's right. So if you want to start doing something more, or you want to start a good habit or whatever, then decreasing the cost. If you want to stop doing a thing, I'll say like, quit smoking or something, which is something that a lot of people are trying to quit. Like increasing the cost of doing that thing, of having a smoke, is gonna keep you from doing it more, because it's going to be like easier to just not do the thing. I'm just reading some of these. An alarm to get ready, the phone on top of the yoga mat by the door. Yeah. So, and I'm like getting all distracted because I want to like interact. But I'm also trying to stay here with you, Mike, and we like having.
It's all good.
So raising the cost, right? Raising the cost of things I don't want to do. One thing that I've done specifically with social media is deleted the apps. Sometimes even just for a weekend. If I'm like, okay, I need a little break from these, I'll delete the app so I can still go on my Safari on my phone and like look at Facebook. But it's harder to do. And if I want to like download the Instagram app, I then have to like sign in, remember my password, which is always a struggle for me. So it's going to be harder to like set that up rather than just be like, oh, well, I can just look at my phone and start scrolling. Does that make sense?
And I'm thinking about one time we were talking about like putting off things that we know are good for us and still wanting to do it, like this yogi example. Like, didn't Brandon say like the only way that he got started working out was like, didn't he like join some app where like he's had to pay money each month and he would lose money or something like that?
Yeah. But I've never like tried those things, but there's a few different apps out there where, it's like incentive to keep going, stay on a streak or something. And if you don't stick to it, yeah, you have to pay money, or like I've heard like you have to donate to a charity that you hate, or like or donate to not charity, like a cause that you hate. And so you're like, no, I don't want to do that. Which can be incentive enough for some people. I think it can help provide some structure and accountability. I mean, the other thing, the for me, working out is so much easier when I have like a workout buddy.
Oh yeah, accountability partner, right?
Yeah, because and Brandon's this way too. Like, if I know I'm going to be letting down someone else, that I'm going to ruin someone else's day by not working out first thing in the morning, I'm going to show up. Like, I'm going to show up because I'm not just thinking about like, oh, I can deal with it, whatever. So that can be helpful. Like finding
Uh,
accountability. Yeah, what's that?
yeah, that's what he was talking about. He was talking about hiring a personal trainer, letting down
Mhm.
that person, and it wasn't the app. That was somebody else. Um,
There are
yeah,
apps though.
yeah. I
Um,
mean, for me personally, it's like this idea of like an Apple Watch of having to like close these rings. It's like, oh man, like I've had this streak for however long, and I start these competitions with my wife and my friends, and now my wife wants to avoid me on these things. But like, there's like some satisfaction in being able to close this ring each day with
well,
activity.
so I have a Fitbit, not an Apple Watch, but and I did not think that I was gonna like it as much as I do. I'm a little addicted to it, and obsessed with it, but I think it's a good tool. So like no matter where I am, who I'm with, everybody around me will know when I've hit 10,000 steps.
Uh
Like
huh.
I mean, I swear I will be like walking down the street with my fiance or like in a group of friends, and I'll be like, you guys, interrupt a big conversation. I made 10,000 steps. Because it does this thing where it like explodes confetti,
Right, right.
like
There's like little fireworks. It's amazing.
yeah. It feels like I'm being like poked too, like, Sarah, you did it. You did it. Congrats. And so it makes me like, if I'm like, oh, okay, well, I need to drive to the store, but I know that the store is only like a 10-minute walk, I'll be like, okay, well, I might get closer to getting that celebration at the end. So maybe I'll do it.
It's so interesting, like what the way that they've designed these things. Like, there's actual metrics behind that you can like measure your progress throughout
Mhm.
time, right? Like you have like a dashboard that has like your VO2 max and your like walking pace and how even you're standing on both feet. And I wonder about that. Like, how do you build in that accountability into other habits of our life, and like how do we make those things measurable? Or is it even important to make those things measurable?
Um, so are you talking about accountability specifically? Like
Yeah. Or
measure?
just being able to feel like there's an effect, right? Because oftentimes the things that we think are healthy
Yeah.
habits don't have a payoff until way into the future. And then we get back to that value sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, oh, that's a big one. So an example that I'm thinking of now is I work with some writers too, and we've talked about how it'll take, you know, so you want to write every night, so write for half an hour every night and an hour every night. And at the end of the night, you just close your laptop, put it away. And it's not until like many months later that you get to be like, I published a book or I finished a novel. So building in some incentives can be really helpful. Like, for example, there's NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. Have you heard of
Hmm.
this? Um, and what I love about it is that there's a goal. So there's like a daily goal, and it's okay, every November and every day you have to write this much. And if you do it, you get to like see, I think there's like I don't know if there's like a message board or something, but it like pops up and you can see your progress and track it. So instead of just being like, well, at the end I'll have written a novel, it's like, no, I got to 10,000 words, or I worked for 6 hours on this, just finding um, smaller rewards along the way
Hmm.
um, can be helpful. Sorry, I'm
So going back to Kidswatch, I mean, she's
Yeah.
extreme. I'm assuming they are extremely motivated to do the exercise, but
Yeah.
it's still that timeliness thing. I mean, I guess I'm wondering, like, what would motivate you to be on time? Is it? It's not doing the thing. I mean, is there any punitive measures for being late? I mean, is there, or is it just too easy to be late? Or
Yeah, I mean, sometimes um sorry, I'm so distracted. This is such a skill that I'm learning that I'm like I'm reading all the comments and also trying to like be present. Yeah, so okay, great. So motivated to exercise. You know what you have to do to get ready, and it's the timing, right? So if you I would say this is where timers are your friend. Um, Next time, so let's take this yoga class, right? So next time you get ready for the yoga class, make a guess for how long it's going to take you, right? Say, okay, so it's going to take me 30 minutes. Write that down. That's helpful for me. It's not helpful for everyone, but I like to write it down. And then afterwards, once you like go to the yoga class, write down how long it actually took. And you can do that by like a stopwatch or timer, like whatever is most helpful. But before you can start like looking at that and like the time blindness aspect, you have to kind of, I'll call it like assess the damage. Like, okay, how long does it actually take? And then you can start to ask questions like, okay, do I need to um, shower beforehand, or can I pack a bag full of my clothes so I can just change when I get to the gym? But so I would say your homework is wait, I have something like a swear jar. Yeah.
yeah,
So your homework is to take a guess at how long it'll take to get ready for this yoga class, and then write it down. And then after you get back from the yoga class, write down how long it actually takes, and do that a couple times until you start to notice like, oh, I thought usually what happens to me is I'll be like, it's going to take 15 minutes, and then it ends up taking 45 minutes because I'm like moving, I'm moving around, and then maybe I do like look on Twitter, or like, oh my gosh, my mom called, I got to talk to her. So
yeah. Aatrox9 had the great suggestion of maybe have something like a swear jar where you drop like money into the jar each minute you're late. But I guess my question for Kidswatch is, why does it matter to you that you're late? I mean, you love yoga. I mean, it sounds like you make it there and you get to the class, but does it actually matter to you about whether or not you're late? I mean, you bring it up here, so you're thinking about it.
it's a great question too, in general, of like, okay, because the answer might be yes, I don't want to be late. Like that's, it's the teacher doesn't like it, or then I'm scrambling to get set up. Like there could be so many reasons why, but clarifying that is important, because if it's okay to be 5 minutes late every time, cool, then you don't have to like work as hard to get there. But yeah, it
Yeah.
would disrupt the class in session, right? um this is a trick sometimes I'll do, is to kind of incentivize myself to avoid that situation, is kind of reminding myself what the feeling is when I walk through the class having to set up and disrupt, and like, and I start, this is maybe the actor in me, but I'll start like, I'll imagine like, oh, all the eyes like looking over at me, and like, and me being like, sorry, 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 sorry. And I'm like, oh, I hate that. Oh my gosh, I hate that. Oh, I'm going to avoid it. Okay. All right. You know what? I'm not going to go on Twitter. I'm just going to go. So yeah.
So we got an agreement. Yeah. So we can play out that idea and that feeling that's displeasurable, and just sort of thinking about that as the cost of what we're not doing on time. Cool.
Yeah, sometimes it's really helpful, especially like with that specific moment, like that maybe it's a 10-second walk from like with your yoga mat from the entrance to where you're getting set up, instead of being like, oh, the whole class is going to feel bad, or the whole hour long class is going to feel bad. It's like, no, I want to avoid this specific moment, and that is why I'm going to really try and rush.
So I'll keep posting these up, Sarah, so you don't need to do it.
Okay,
And
great.
thank you for the compliment, Bass Insider, of of my skills of reading comments. I've realized that I need to be fully aware of the things I need to get to an hour before I need to leave. So I need to think about anything else I need, like floating a memo around in front of my face about it. That's cool.
So yeah, let me read this. So
And then I guess the incentive for Kids Watch, they are saying that, just to be more relaxed and getting there on time and being able to take the time to actually do. I mean, I'm assuming that's what you're doing yoga for, is for that relaxation, right? And it sounds like there's such urgency at the beginning of rushing there. So
yeah, well, and this is great too. Vast Insider is talking about like an hour. There's something about an hour that helps me. So or sometimes half an hour. When I break it into like chunks, I'm like, okay, so great. So this stream, for example, today, I was actually pretty nervous to hop on because I haven't been on the stream in a while. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to talk about and like all this stuff. So what I did today is I was like, okay, this morning, I'm not going to worry about it because it's later on and that's fine. But at 12 p.m., then I'm going to start thinking about it and be like, okay, 12 p.m. It's an hour from when I'm supposed to hop on. I want to make sure that I have coffee to drink throughout because I know that'll make me feel better. I want to like meditate. I want to build things in to that hour, but I also want time to be like, actually, you know what? I do feel like taking a shower. So that will make me feel better. So I'm going to walk over. Does that kind of make sense? I don't know if I'm just like saying things that make sense in my brain, but help me understand.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you're even budgeting chunks of time to worry about things that that are going to worry about.
Yeah.
That's an awesome skill to be able to turn that off, because oftentimes I'm hearing people like those things just playing through my mind all day, but you're like giving that voice and like sort of saying, I'm going to have this dedicated worry time.
And I think a lot of that has come from, some of it is the like executive functioning, training and coaching and all that. But some of it's also just from being an actor and having to create your process for like, oh, I know I'm going on stage. There's going to be 500 people. There's usually not 500 people in front of me, but there's going to be, 100 people there that are waiting for me to tell this story. I could be freaking out about that all day. Just all day. I wake up in the morning, oh my gosh, they're going to see me, oh my gosh, they're going to hate me, like all the weird like things that we tell ourselves and we worry about. But if you it's like like what you're saying, like planning your worrying time.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, I'm not going to do this now, but I know that my worrying time is on the calendar, so that time is, if I'm going to worry, I'm going to do it in that time.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but it really helps me because I have a lot of anxiety, and I will get into those modes of like kind of thoughts just like spinning around, like, oh, it could go this way, it could go, what if I go this way, oh my gosh, well, what if the worst thing ever happens and we all die, and it's and like that's kind of how my brain will go about things. And so instead of saying like, don't think those thoughts, stop thinking those thoughts, which usually just sends me into thinking more of those thoughts, and then being mad at myself for not being able to get out of it. So instead, I just say like, okay, I'll have the space for it, but not for another 4 hours. Right now, I'm going to go do something, usually physical. Usually I go for a walk or go work out or even just have a little dance party.
Yeah.
Just a little dance party.
You're reminding me of my friend John, who they've just found out that they're going to have twins, and it's their first set of children, and they have to figure out all the things, right? Like maternity leave, they have to figure out childcare eventually, they have to figure out if their house is big enough, they have to figure out all these things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that John told me about was like, hey, rather than like chunking these things like all over our calendars, my wife and I are just gonna go and get like a hotel for half a day, or we're gonna go in there, we're gonna get the full night, but for half a day, we're just gonna have our own like retreat and just figure all these things out and just get it done in one fell swoop and then get it over with. Like that, what your story of like dedicating that specific time sort of reminded me of that strategy.
Yeah, well, and you bringing up another great point, which is like environment, and how a lot of us are like, we notice when we're in a different environment. That's why like working from home can be great because there's not as much of a commute, but it's also really frustrating because sometimes when you are like you go to work in an office, you look around and you see the office and you're like, oh yeah, oh, I'm in work mode. Okay. Yes. Those are my cues to say like do work. Rather than at home, you're like, yeah, but the dishes are over there. And like, yeah, but I could go on my phone. Does that kind of make sense? It's like we
Yeah.
are affected by environmental factors. So your friend John, like just saying, okay, 6 hours in a hotel, we're just gonna throw ourselves in there. It can actually help. Just be
Yeah.
like, yeah.
And Bassin Starters says work retreats are the best. Yeah, and I'm like thinking about like why don't we have work retreats for our personal lives too? Like, which is what he's doing, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's really kind
Well,
of cool.
Joe, my fiance is he's a writer, so he writes novels, and it's so hard for him to do that here. So he's done a thing before where he'll go on like writing retreats, and those are I think a big thing like for writers especially, but everyone should have them. Retreats, like I guess there's like yoga retreats, meditation retreats, but yeah, um, changing up the environment. Yeah.
Yeah, treat yourself, Bassin Sutter. Go find a hotel and take those bathtub bath bombs and work away from home and have a staycation.
Yeah. Oh, I have so many bath bombs that are unused. It's like you have to schedule
Just throw them in all at the same time.
It's just like, all right, packing up my backpack full of bath bombs that I never use at home, but I'll use at the hotel.
Yeah, it's gonna be like one of those elephant toothpaste experiments in your bathroom.
Right. Well, I feel like we've been talking a lot about kind of my work and like my approaches to things, but I kind of want to put you on in the hot seat if that's okay. And
Yes.
can I just ask I've been wanting to ask you this. How did you get into the work that you do?
Yeah. So I was like one of those kids that was lucky enough to know in ninth grade what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
Like I had Mr. O'Hare. It was ninth grade biology. He was like the cool teacher that like I actually like understood the way that he taught, and he also kept a pet toad that I got the honor of feeding every week, like a single worm. And so I was like, he's my hero. I want to be Mr. O'Hare for the rest of my life. And then like, so I went to college, pursued a secondary education degree in with a biology major, and then I found out how much work it was to be a teacher. Like there's so much work that goes into it. You don't get just the show for that hour. Like there's so much planning, and I was swimming in it, and especially all the work that I was taking home and grading. And I was just like, wow, is this going to be my life for the next 40 years? And so like, I still love working with kids. I still love teaching. And it's so cliche, but like there is that special spark of that moment when you see a kid get it. Like it sounds so cliche, but it's so true. Like it's one of those most rewarding things. So I end up going to get my master's degree in ed leadership because I asked my mentor at the time. I was like, what should I do? Should I do more curriculum? Should I go into admin? He goes, you already got the curriculum. Just go into this. It'll open more doors. I go, okay, thanks, Rob. Like you're my boss and you're my hero. So I did that, and then I landed at a new school. I was working at a fine and performing arts high school teaching biology to freshmen, to kids that didn't want to learn biology at all. I mean, they were there to
performing arts high school.
Yeah, they were there to sing, to dance, to sculpt, to creative write.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, it was cool. It was cool. Like it was a challenge. It was an intellectual challenge for me to like figure out like how do I create lessons that are focused through their lenses rather than just like saying how important my subject matter is, right? And like that was a really cool intellectual sort of challenge. But then again, like it was just that work-life balance, and I jumped at the opportunity to try out an admin job. So I became a director of a freshman campus. As that school expanded to a certain size, we had to like open a remote campus across the street, and I got to do some of the administrative things. And then I just stuff like it was a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill, a lot of luck actually. I landed a job as the AP of operation, like assistant principal of operations for that school. I got into start doing the teacher evaluations. I really like I really like the idea of like leadership of like, okay, so I had this
Mm.
effect on 150 kids. I helped them grow, but now I can work with teachers that could grow even more. And part of that's my narcissism, but I truly wanted to like make an impact on the world. Um,
Yeah.
and then so yeah, I was a principal of a high school for 5 6 years, and then again that work life balance or that work life integration just wasn't happening for me.
Mm.
And it got to that point where it was like I wasn't doing what I was saying I was doing for those kids, and I felt like um, I felt like I was like selling them something that wasn't true. And so I ended up looking for other opportunities, and I found this job at Fusion Academy. And I thought it was kind of made up. I was just like, oh dang, like really, it's a private school that's just one on one for every single class.
Yeah.
Like, how much do you guys charge for this? And yeah, it's a luxury price, but I feel like it's really serving the kids and giving them what they need. But it's like one-on-one teaching, like one-on-one instruction for kids that identify as neurodiverse, that I can help create a community of kids that get each other, that like want to learn an environment that's safe for them. And it's only 40 kids. I know every single kid's story. I know every family's challenges. I
Mm.
create like this ecosystem where I'm working with their therapists, their neuropsychs, their psychologists. We're piecing all that stuff together. And then I have a great, terrific team of teachers here too. It's like it's a little bit more intimate. It's more manageable for me, um, and I feel like that piece of like human connection hasn't been lost because it's not that giant organization. And so that's short story long. Like that's how I got into this work. Like
Yeah.
bio
It's
teacher
so
to fine
funny.
art school to
I feel
now.
like I've known you pretty well, but for the last like year or so, and I never knew like that kind of story leading up to it all. Uh,
Yeah,
and Fusion Academy is like I I was confused at first too. I was like, that's a thing that exists. You can just have one-on-one like work. I mean,
yeah. I mean, here's the thing. That was one of the things that frustrated me most in the public school setting, especially in this large metropolitan area in which we live adjacent to, was that they basically gutted special education programs in those schools. Like you get like 5 minutes with a social worker a week. Like, what's that supposed to do for a kid that is worrying about food security, that might have PTSD, that is all these different factors, and they're trying to do well in class, and they have mental health challenges. Like, how are you supposed to serve them with 5 minutes of social work a week?
mm,
Here at this school, we don't have in-house therapists. We don't have in-house professionals. We're not a special ed school. We're not therapeutic, but we really like we do all the things that I was talking about of like trying to like focus that lens of the curriculum into what the kids are interested in. And then I really work hand in hand with their therapists of like, okay, these are the things that you guys are working on in session. What are some strategies we can bring into the classroom to help that kid? And
mm,
how do we create that relationship between a teacher and a student? They need to be able to see each other as people first. There has to be that unconditional love and care. There has to be that motivation piece, and then finally, after you get those two pieces, then you can finally start teaching. Because like
mm.
in the end, like what does content matter if they're never going to use it again? Like how do we also teach stuff that you can't just Google, right? Like how do we teach those critical thinking skills? How do we tap into that creativity? How do we inspire kids to chase their own passions? Like those are the questions that I really ask on a day-to-day basis.
Well, and I keep thinking about because our work, I guess, is kind of similar, and I keep thinking this about this feeling of like being seen, like feeling like you're actually seen and actually heard, rather than just like having a million strategies thrown at you. Like, yeah, you can Google those things, but like to actually show up and have someone be like, oh, I hear you, you are an individual, and these things that have helped other people could help you too, but you have to form that, find your way of using it. The other thing that I'm hearing is that like starting out with that relationship to humans, that's kind of was Brandon's philosophy too when he hired me specifically, was like, I was like, well, I didn't go to school for, anything like that, but I can form a relationship with people
Hmm.
and trust them and let them and help them trust me. And once you have that base, then you can really talk about anything and implement strategies from there, and build skills. So it's really cool to like hear you talk about all this because
Yeah, I love that. I love that it's like that relationship piece first, and then sort of customizing their experience. Like there are like research-based practices or whatever, like and things like that, but like we can change those things up. Like I think about like what we did for executive functioning in the public school, right? Everybody gets a binder, everybody has colored tabs, everybody gets an assignment notebook, and that's basically how we're going to call it an executive functioning program, right?
yep.
That doesn't work for like 30% of the kids in a school. And so like here it's like, okay, it's not one size fits all. And I love that that's the approach that you take with your clients of like, okay, well, this didn't work. Let's throw it out. Let's try something new. Like, or
Yeah.
just keep tinkering it until it doesn't need to be tinkered with anymore.
Right. Yeah, before Brandon hired me, I didn't actually I'm a little embarrassed about this now, but I had never heard of like executive functioning. And I was like, he was talking to me about like being an executive functioning coach, and I was like, am I supposed to know what that means? Like, what would and as I started like approaching it, I started realizing like, okay, yeah, so there's strategies involved in like in executive functioning coaching that I've used before, but
Mhm.
it really is different. It's like there's so many executive functions, and they can work in so many different ways, and it's yeah. So um
Well, yeah, and I mean, when we talk about it in this setting here, it's not just like the organizing your backpack and like knowing when things are due. Like it's some of the social interactions, like how do we control that impulsivity and like what's going to come out of your mouth without a filter? How is that going to have an impact on whoever's hearing that message that you have? Like
right.
I'm really working with some of the some pretty complex kids here, on like that being able to forecast consequences and like action versus reward and things like that.
Yeah.
So
Dang.
I just love kids. It's too. I mean, like we don't hire people here that don't love kids, that don't love working with kids. Like I
Yeah.
have like I have like 20-year-olds that are fresh out of college teaching here. I have people that are retirees. Like I got this guy teaching physics and math that used to be a Fermi Labs like physicist. Like it's so cool that like what unites us is that we love working with adolescents. We love working with children.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking too about what, and I know we don't have too much time left, but I was thinking about what you were saying with teaching biology to performing arts at a performing arts school, and using like the lens that they might understand and kind of coming from where they're coming from, which like I saw Bass Insider put here, like that would have been so helpful for me growing up. And I was thinking the same thing. I was like, oh, that would have been, really nice is because I hated biology. But if I had kind of come in.
Yeah, and like what H Rocks 9 put in there, it's like, yeah, bio is vital for
Mhm.
dancers. But how do you also present it in a modality that in which like they're actually gonna care or like the the traditional school system is based on this factory design when we want the output maximized. Like you're put in a classroom of 30 kids, and that's how many I had at a time. And so I had to find the different techniques that would meet about 70% of the kids. And then I would have to really figure out and tinker with that 30% that was left over. Of
Mm,
like, and then like how do we and then in a public school setting, you don't necessarily have that flexibility too, right? Like where it's like, oh well, eh, rather than let's taking a unit multiple choice unit exam, like how can we work together to find ways for you to demonstrate mastery of skill and content knowledge, right? And whether that's through your art, if that's through your motion, if that's through your composition, like I wish that there was a way to sort of take what we do here and put it back into the schools where most of the kids are.
yeah. I mean, I've been thinking about this a lot too, because I've been like, yeah, I'm reading all this about like chemistry and physics, and but I've been really interested lately in the human body, like, and just like the like anatomy, and I was like, you know, ADHD brain. I was like, I'm going to take a course on it because that's what I'm going to do. And I did, but I started taking this course just real quick. And it's called like the like anatomy for artists. And it's more for like visual artists of trying to understand like the muscles in order to like create them. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, it's for visual artists, but like as actors, we create like the shape of our characters too. And so it's just a really great way to like take something that you already understand and then take like go into something you don't really understand and bridge the gap. So
Yeah, I think that it's so interesting how we remember just certain things from school too. Like the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Like
Mhm.
when does that ever come in useful? But then you're working out and like you're like you figure out if your sport is an endurance sport or is it short burst or if it's yoga or whatever, and then you start learning about muscle structures and you're like, oh, this is why I'm probably a long distance runner versus a sprinter. This is like why
Yeah,
I have more flexibility in my muscle structure than other people. So like, yeah, I mean,
putting
it's
context to it. It's
that's exactly what it
oh
is,
wow, I'm
and
actually
giving it value. All right, we're at an hour.
yeah, I know. We gotta go.
We're at an
And I have
hour,
to
but
pry us away.
this has been amazing. Like
Yeah, it was really fun.
this has been absolutely awesome, and thank you guys all for thanks to all the folks for joining us today.
Yeah.
We'll figure out what's to come next week, and we'll let y'all know. Possibly Brandon will be back, or possibly we might be
Yeah.
riffing again. So
Maybe Brandon's watching from the from the hospital room, like, oh, I don't know. But awesome. So thank you, everybody. This has been really nice, and congratulations to Brandon. And oh, there we go. Yep. Oh,
that's Mr. Soothing voice himself is telling us that Baby Rex is here. That's wonderful. We'll see you all next week. We hope you can join us on another hour with Mike or Sarah
thanks,
or Mike and
everyone.
Brandon or whoever it is. Glad that you could be here.
All right. Bye.